Okay, welcome everyone. I'm Bill Lavender. I'm the proprietor of Lavender Ink Press, which also hosts the imprint Diálogos. And we're here tonight under the auspices of the New Orleans Poetry Festival to do this reading. And we have an outstanding lineup of people who are going to read. And the first I'm going to introduce Indran Amirthanayagam. I always have to pause with his name. He gives me a thumbs up when I get it right. And Indran, are you and Jennifer going to be reading together, or?
Yes,
yeah. Okay. So Indran is in the tradition of the diplomat poet, as many South American writers and poets were. He works in the Foreign Service in the United States. He writes in English, French, Spanish, and I'm not sure if he might write in other languages also. But it's a great pleasure to welcome him. His book, Blue Window, that Diálogos just released. He wrote in Spanish, and it was translated into English by Jennifer Rathbun, and who's here also. And so we're going to be hearing from the two of them. And I'll turn it over to Indran.
Thank you so much, Bill, and it's a real pleasure, even virtually, to be connecting to New Orleans Poetry Festival and to read from this book, which is very dear to me and dear to both of us. I should say at the beginning we'll read a few poems from Blue Window. I'll read the original Spanish, and Jennifer will read her translation into English. And at the very end, I'll read a poem in memoriam for my dear friend Richard Shea, whom I learned today has passed away. So I feel like sharing this poem, a new poem, thinking of him, who was a great supporter of poetry and the arts in general. So I'll begin from Blue Window. Ventana Azul. As you can see, I'm wearing a blue shirt, a sky blue shirt. Más allá de lo común. It's a book of love poems. Una locura, una llamada a la medianoche, una travesura, más bien un juego, un reconocimiento de que hay derecho a conversar cuando a uno le dé la gana, una informalidad deliciosa, aunque todas las mañanas escucho un programa radial que me informa efectivamente que no hay derecho, y los invitados entrevistados confirman el hecho con sus críticas a este congresista y aquel soplón. Las latinoamericanas están despiertas y dispuestas a romper el espacio, decir que sí hay derecho, solo que no depende del Estado o de la sociedad civil, sino de ellas, con sus llamadas casi a la medianoche.
Beyond common, madness, a call at midnight, mischief, or better yet, a game. Acknowledgement that one has the right to talk whenever one pleases, a delicious informality. Although every morning I listen to a radio program that says, in effect, there is no such right. And the interviewed guests confirm the fact with their criticism of this congressman and that informer. Latin American women are awake and ready to tear up the place. They say that they have the right, only that it doesn't depend on the state or society, but on them, with their calls at almost midnight.
Una pausa. Hasta luego, hasta la vista, y no hay más tarde. Voy a dormir sin darte abrazo ni apapacho, sin alimento ninguno para tu fantasía ya de antaño.
A pause. Goodbye. So long. There are no more farewells. I'm going to bed without embracing or pampering you, without nourishing whatsoever your fantasy. Now come.
Saludos. Adiós, que estés bien, me voy. Tonterías del corazón herido, deseo insatisfecho, reclamos inesperados. Deja que el tiempo sane todo y las mareas renueven la arena, que sea puro grano blanco para otra pareja en camino por el mar.
Greetings. Goodbye. I wish you well. I'm leaving. Idiocies from a wounded heart, unsatisfied desire, unexpected complaints. Let time heal everything, and may the waves renew the sand. May there only be pure white grains for another couple walking along the sea.
La vecina católica. Amar a la vecina, esperarla cuando llega del trabajo y darle un café, un abrazo. Perdón, me quedé pensando en la vida al otro lado. Déjame atender a mis hijos, al oficio que me enseñó mi papá y que lleva su energía del principio cuando mis padres se unieron con gritos alegres más mudos, se casaron en otra época bajo el mando del decoro inglés. Lástima que nunca conversé con mi padre sobre el momento del inicio de la vida. Mi madre sacrificó sus propios deseos por satisfacer a los hijos, su marido, lo que la fe nos enseña, ofrecer la otra mejilla, dar de comer al vagabundo. La respeto tanto que no le puedo preguntar sobre algo natural y oculto en la vida católica, esta hambre que devora la calma, que pide su alimento, y para un poeta implica dejar de escribir a la vecina.
The Catholic neighbor. Love your neighbor. Wait for her when she comes home from work and give her coffee, a hug. Sorry, I was thinking about life on the other side. Let me attend to my children, to the trade my father taught me, and that carries his energy from the start, when my parents married with mute shouts of joy. They were wed in other times under the command of English decorum. It's a shame I never talked to my father about the moment of life's beginning. My mother sacrificed her own desires to please her children, her husband, that which faith teaches us. Offer the other cheek, give food to the homeless. I respect her so much that I cannot ask about something natural and hidden in Catholic life. This hunger that devours the calm, that demands its nourishment, and for a poet implies stop writing to the neighbor.
Jennifer, let's skip the next one in La Puerta. The next poem will be Pregunta y Vida. En las secuelas de las olas que nos mecieron en la cuna, durante la mañana siguiente, el corazón y el espíritu alegres, subiendo el cerro, noto que el amor suele borrar al pasado, barrer restos de argumentos y disputas, para que el cuerpo esté limpio y los pasos frescos. Y cuando sucede el desencanto y su expresión rutinaria, los silencios que muerden el ánimo, ¿qué haremos con los cerros o el amanecer? O con el perro que tomará el lugar de Lucky, ya viejo, compañero del camino por un tiempo más, y yo, saltando como un joven de 20 años, feliz y sin miedo, a pesar de las circunstancias, lo que desataba la melancolía solo hace días, cuando estuve convencido por mi amigo de que nunca más debía vestirme con ropa de cazador o de mendigo o poeta, salvo si guardara envuelto en la bolsa unos preservativos contra el futuro y su fruto salvaje.
Question and life. In the wake of waves that rocked us in the cradle, the morning after, heart and spirit content, climbing the hill, I note that love tends to erase the past, sweep away remnants of arguments and disputes, so that the body is clean and our steps fresh. And when disillusionment happens and its routine expression silences that bite the spirit, what will we do with hills or dawn or with the dog that will take the place of Lucky, now old, companion of the road for some time more, and I jumping like a 20-year-old man, happy and fearless in spite of the circumstances. That which triggered melancholy only a few days ago when I was convinced by my friend that I should never again wear clothing of a hunter or beggar or poet unless I kept stashed away in a bag some prolifics against the future and its savage fruit.
Fuera del oasis. No tengo fuerzas por las mañanas, escuchando al canto de los pájaros en sus danzas amorosas. No las tengo cada día desde soledad interrumpida en la tierra por los oasis que aparecen y se quedan en sus huecos mientras el peregrino sigue su camino. Que estés bien, te digo, que te cuides, encuentres alegría, y sí, que poco a poco empiezas a olvidar al compañero que te llevó a aquella laguna en medio de las dunas.
Out of the oasis. I don't have strength in the mornings, listening to the birds' songs and their love dances. I don't have it every day in this solitude, interrupted on earth by the oasis which appear and remain in its gaps, while the pilgrim follows his road. I wish you well, I say. Take care, and may you find happiness, and yes, little by little begin to forget the companion who took you to that lagoon in the middle of the dunes.
And now a poem in 3 lines, which could represent all the poems I ever write or ever read. I dare to say, en pocas palabras todos, nacen, crecen, se enamoran, se decepcionan, sobreviven, se enamoran, sobreviven, se alegran, dejan de crecer, disminuyen, se mueren.
In a few words, everyone is born, grows, falls in love, is disillusioned, survives, falls in love, survives, is happy, stops growing, diminishes, dies.
I think in the interest of time we'll read one more poem and then I'll finish with that poem I mentioned earlier. We'll finish with the poem Ilusión. Ilusión. Detrás de la estación de Repsol caminamos hacia el parque donde con nuestras manos entrelazadas nos enamoramos. Y de esa primera tarde la estación se volvió la pierna y el encuentro de un amor hecho de caminatas hacia múltiples espacios verdes de esta ciudad brumosa, construida al lado de aguas violentas y de estaciones de combustible. Un amor moderno que dependía del transporte público y privado para dejarnos cerca de Alameda, donde en otra ciudad de América un hombre solía pasear con su armadillo. Eres el mar, el árbol, el camino de piedras, el olor a gasolina. Soy el feligrés, el explorador, el representante de países lejanos, donde otros amores nacen en sus propios parques, al lado de las aguas que rodean a todos, aún en medio del desierto, como aquel de Paracas. Dejo mi cargo, entro al mar, dejas tus arrecifes de coral y tus formaciones rocosas, donde se han hundido los barcos para abrumar la costa. 35,000 hombres fueron borrados de la costa srilankesa ese día del tsunami. Déjame ser uno más.
Illusion. Behind the Repsol station, we walk towards the park where with our hands intertwined, we fell in love. And from that first afternoon, the station became the leg and encounter of a love made of walks towards multiple green spaces in this hazy city, built next to freezing waters and gas stations, a modern love that depended on public and private transportation to take us close to the Alameda, where in another city in America, a man used to walk around with his armadillo. You are the sea, the tree, the stone road, the smell of gasoline. I am the parishioner, the explorer, the representative of distant countries where other loves arise in their own parks next to waters surrounding everyone, even in the middle of the desert, like that of Paracas. I leave my post, I enter the sea, you leave your coral reefs and your rock formations where boats have sunk to overwhelm the seashore. 35,000 men were erased from the Sri Lankan coast that day of the tsunami. Let me be one more.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for these marvelous translations and for your own poems. I'll read now Richard Shea. The epigraph, the poem is called Richard Shea. The epigraph is The Dying Season, from a poem by Mervyn Taylor. Where shall I begin? At the beginning, which for us was 1988 at Prudential Bish. Richard and John were tax lawyers and I a new recruit editing the marketing newsletter. And we had at work as work pal and dear friend Carol, a recent grad from the MFA in theatre at NYU. The names are important for the diary, and they are written in verses, which is my calling. But oh, for the plain, dull thud of prose, some manageable sound, even if vaguely unpleasant. I write numbed, shocked. How could one, our dear friend with whom we skipped along village streets, synchronized, Carol, Richard, and I, how could one leg of the triangle just vanish without warning? I don't know the circumstances. The death happened weeks ago, and I never saw the message on Facebook sent to spam until now that came from his former wife. I'm trying to reach the children, Danai, Orion. I'm calling Carol. I will talk with Madeline. I will look for John. What else to do now but wait for more news to fill in the puzzle of the passing? I don't know why that is important, why we must perform the post-mortem in our heads and pay homage at our domestic shrines before we can look ahead to the lives we're still charged with leading. Naji, I would call him. We debated about Afghanistan in the old days when Najibullah was in charge and before his head was staked to the square. Tyrants are committing murder again, this time in Ukraine. And I miss the chat with Richard about causes and where this will end. He must have seen the first reports of the invasion, judging by the date of his death. It is irrelevant, I suppose, the day one dies. But just like birth, there is magic to that date, and all the dates we honor in this life. So now, on this April 19th, 2022, I write to you, Richard, your soul free, and I write to all our friends and family, walking still ahead in this brief day. Let us remember our Richard. Let us keep him close in heart and head, and never forget his music, his murals, and the art of his friendship. Thank you very much. Oh, thank you. Much love.
Thank you, Indran, and I'm so sorry for your loss. And thank you, Jennifer. That was great reading. Our next reader is going to be Rosemary Daniell. Rosemary is quite accomplished. The collection of poetry that we released last year is called The Murderous Sky, Poems of Madness and Mercy, won the William Wisdom Faulkner Gold Medal, and she's also the author of A Sexual Tour of the Deep South, a memoir from Holt Reinhardt, Fort Bragg and Other Points South, and actually too many books to mention. She's also well known for her workshop series called Zona Rosa, which happens around the South. Workshops for women, and she's I'm really glad to have her here. It was kind of touch and go if her schedule was going to work to get her here, and anyway, very happy to introduce Rosemary Daniell.
Thank you, Bill. Zona Rosa is from the zone in Mexico City, but there are some brave men in our group, so it's not, they're not just men, women. But you know, I was thinking about this reading tonight, and I'm so happy to be back with you again this year. Last year was very difficult for me to read some of the poems in the Murderous Sky because my daughter had just passed away, and many of the poems in that book are about her. But so I thought I would like to go backwards a little bit. You mentioned my first two collections of poetry, A Sexual Tour of the Deep South and Fort Bragg and Other Points South. Well, earlier in my life, I was very involved in writing about sexual politics. I was very, very caught up in the women's movement. And it was somewhat of a miracle that I even became a poet, because I was a high school dropout and a mother of 3 young children. And I just happened to go to a workshop at Emory University, and it was just an evangelical experience. I never had heard of T.S. Eliot or Emily Dickinson or any of the great poets at that time. And from then on, it was a passion that just filled my life. So what I'd like to do first tonight is to read a poem that goes backwards to that time in my life and kind of catching up a little bit here. This is new, and it's part of a collection I'm working on now, and it's called Baudelaire in Hot Pants. And that title came from an Atlanta Journal-Constitution reporter who called me that in a newspaper article. Well, I had to remind him that Baudelaire was a boy, he wasn't a girl. So, but anyway, this is a poem that just recaptures. So some of those poems I'm working on right now, and then I'll go back to the poems from the Murderous Sky. And this is titled after that book, and Baudelaire and Hot Pants. Sylvia Plath and Anne Sexton or even Emily Dickinson were not my first poets. Instead, I read Retke, Tom Gunn, Ted Hughes, and soon my mentor, James Dickey, a 50s housewife copying down their lines, analyzing how they did it in my high school dropout's notebook. But then I found them, and Dickey, by then my lover, dripped acid. They're just shrill, hysterical women who write about their menstrual periods, throwing their abortions in a gutter. But I knew better. I'd read in Mademoiselle about disturbers of the peace, all men I hadn't noticed, and wanted to be one. And in the late 60s and 70s, married to my third husband, I turned seething rattlesnake, my rage, my truths pouring out. If you write well enough, you can write anything, I told myself. Though my male peers felt differently. You just can't write that way, James Wright and Robert Greeley said. Baudelaire in Hot Pants, a reviewer called me when I, a saucy, replied, don't you know Baudelaire was a boy? Even the feminists in New York said I was too macho. Ms. Magazine that my poems had too much blood in them. And worse, I still liked men. And then there was the hate mail that arrived in small sealed envelopes, scrawled by proper Southern women, enraged that I'd broken the taboo on not only writing, but speaking words out loud about sex and anger, the 2 words that kept my mother in their thrall until her suicide at 60. Yes. The podium was a war zone, and some shuddered and rushed out, but always I walked away exhilarated, for there were also the ones who crowded around, who said I'd written exactly what they'd always felt, but never been able to say, who wordless sipped rings off fingers to place them on mine. And two that were the good men, Greil Marcus and Rolling Stone, Hayden Carruth and Richard Eberhart, who, despite putting his hand on my breast, pronounced my poetry great. And where did all that clash and chaos lead? To an aging woman, married to a man she loves, to whom books, art, and yes, truth are still everything. A woman who sometime wakes in the night, notebooks played on the Afghan, a book of poems still in hand. To think of her three children, the two who died, a woman with a tangled, grateful heart who still wonders if that intrepid girl and how she came to be. So that was just something about the other me. I wanted to introduce the other me because, you know, we don't choose our subjects. At least that's what I found. Our subjects choose us. And as William Butler Yeats said, and his view, sex and death are the only things truly worth writing about. And, you know, I really enjoyed very much writing about those other things and lighter things. And then things happened in my life that led me to write the poems in this book, The Murderous Sky, Poems of Madness and Mercy, which was written over a period of 30 years. It was really, the poems in this book were written to save my life while I was going through what I went through, because it turned out that two of my children were afflicted with mental illnesses. My daughter, a brilliant painter, was also bipolar and became an opioid addict. She is the one who died a year and a half ago. And then my son had paranoid schizophrenia, which runs in our family. It's been genetic in our family. And both those are very, very difficult to deal with. I didn't want to write about the dark side of my life. I really didn't care to do that, but I had to do it for myself. So I'm just going to read a few of the poems in that book now. And I know that last year was hard for me to read from them, but I think I can just read a few of them now. Okay, I'm a little more acclimated to that now. First, I'll read about my daughter. I call her Lily in my poems. Her real name is Darcy. And by the way, I see my other daughter, Laura Daniell, here down in the audience with us tonight, and also Utvala, who is a Zona Rosa in our Zona Rosa groups. Okay, the other you opens the door. Sunday morning, an apricot light floods the pale space. Walls sponge peach ecru, canvases stacked like juicy swatches. Your cat eyes dollops of Egyptian gold, lolls at an ankle. You drift into diaphanous cream. Just a thrift shop thing, you say. Your auburn hair a backlit flame. The rich tones of Italy flicker. The scent of cinnamon wafts. We embrace as we have 1,000 times. I just off the plane from the islands from Mexico. Your bones slight beneath my fingertips. And how was the opening last week? At least the reviews were good. Behind you, the man undrapes himself, but he is incidental. This is about you and me. I, your mother aging, you, my daughter, in your prime, the other you, who is the other me, of wet colors, brush strokes, of mistakes made yet not grieved. The you makes up for my Southern grandmother's life, the purdah of perfect wife, white gloves, church, for my mother's girlish dreams of writing, of love, sweet love, gone up in madness, for the bottles I boiled, the diapers I hung out, the husbands I escaped, the jobs I took, the other you who is the meaning of the art books, the private schools, the airline tickets, who lives out of freedom I only dreamed. Yes, this is a you who would have been before the dark rivers of the Lower East Side, before the bombed out buildings, the machine guns overhead, before the sorghum syrup of heroin through your veins, before the men with fists like stones or crude tattoos, before the years of methadone sucking out your marrow, before all this was taken from you as if by a brush fire or a holocaust. Oh God, if only I could redirect this film. Oh God, if only I could let parts of it fall to the cutting room floor. Oh God, if only this was a TV movie, the other you running backwards into pure happiness. And then I'll read one more from that section of the book that is about my daughter, Darcy. Sacred things are not the ancient Chinese tapestry, silk heavy with embroidery, stitched 1,000 years ago, that stoned you cut up to make an ugly dress, or the few pieces of sterling, each stamped with a rose, left from a wedding before you were born. Nor was it that heavy gold snake, my one good piece of jewelry coiled in its box, waiting to be pawned again. And of course, not that small plastic card embossed with the magic numbers with which you carve the money from my account as easily as you would butter with a knife. Or are they the nights and nights spent writhing? For though I, with my sins, am an unlikely one, turn good only through default, we know that all mothers are saints, eager to give up their own lives. No, none of these are the sacred things that stand like totems, like the cast Egyptian cat you loved beside the door to pain as it heaves, clangs open again. None of these are the object that lay as though carelessly thrown onto the stone slab, that ancient, it seems, rock for sacrifice, like my heart gone blood-stained and blood-stained, born as we were with the black bile running in our family, a river, or was it more like a swamp or quicksand? No, what is a snapshot of you at 3 in your red velvet bowler, the ribbons bouncing down your plump back, in your black princess coat with white fur collar, your fat legs turning the petals of your trike. Next, your dimpled arms around my knees as you beg for red jam on white bread. Yes, that and the drawing you made at 8, your pitiful pearl doll, the tears rolling down her plastic cheeks, the balloon over her head reading, "Mother, please love me," or the sketch of me at my desk typing. I dreamed the house was on fire and you wouldn't save me, reads the caption. And then, captured by your girlish hand, the watercolor of the 100-foot pines, the goldfish pond carved of coral rock, our calico perched beside it, watching the swerve of red fish. Or later, the memory of you striding up Fifth Avenue in high heels and short fur, gorgeous in your Italian boy haircut, more confident it seemed than I had ever been. And the picture taken by the famous artist, the one who was once my lover, you newly blonde, a tumble of gold and cream, trussed in red velvet for your gig at the Gaslight Club, a woman from another century who will soon learn the things I, her mother, will never know about needles and shooting galleries, about bombed out buildings with men standing overhead holding guns, about where one buys the works neatly cellophaned, and finally about overdoses, hospitals, and jail cells. And that was when, 10 years, an eternity ago, before I watched what had been my vision of you, my beautiful one, stepping off that greyhound, eyes purpled by a fist, an old man's shirt hiding the knife cuts, the blood-black gashes marking your perfect flesh, and all your things, your poor things, stuffed into that one green plastic garbage bag. But the most sacred may be the photo of you taken 5 years ago, your long hair a radiant shawl to your heart-shaped face, the scars inside your elbows like mauve pencil dots, hidden by the merry blue cotton gown, your deep lashed eyes shining with stars, or is it tears, into the eyes of your newborn, Raphael, angel you called him, and scrawled on the back is the fat arid heart, tears dripping from its jagged tear, and inside of it, the names of Janie and Bob, the happy couple who the next day in a lawyer's staid rooms will take him from our arms forever. Oh my God, cried out the man I once read of, drawn and quartered, yet still holding in his hands his own beating heart. And yes, these are the sacred things, the muscle ripped from the living breast, the wounds made by blades, rough-edged and blunt, the kind of sacrifices after which none ever matters again. So I think I'll just read. I'll read two about my son, and that would be the end. Okay, this is I don't know whether any of you have ever had a close relationship with someone with paranoid schizophrenia, but you know they do really believe that the things that these illusions that they have are real, are true, totally true. This is when my son lived in an apartment very near me, and the title of it is The Rules. People have died for what is in this bag. My son of the plastic bag he carries everywhere. When he was at his most paranoid, he carried all his valuable papers everywhere in a plastic bag, garbage bag. Double locks on the doors, standing guard always. The personal spoken only in whispers, no light let in, even on the 14th floor. Else they might watch us by telescope. And what of your lovers' murderers? On your old upright royal, you record everything, minute by minute, the messages they send. They live in the apartment above. They call your name through the heat registers, and the lock on your file cabinet, broken again. There are spies everywhere. The man who comes to fix the thermostat. And why you spew an inch from my face? Can't you understand that you must be vigilant, that they will kill you too? The arm I once cradled, dimpled and plump, now hovers above me, hard, brown, muscular. Your blue eyes blaze, you rage in the thrall of what I know to be true. I listen, and yes, I'm afraid of you, for you, my son. And the last one I'll read is also for my son. And this one is, you know, fortunately, toward the end of my son's life, he got on the right medication. He had the right treatment, and he was wonderful. He was one of the most wonderful people I've ever known. He was extremely sweet and wonderful to be around. And he loved music, and he was in little bands, and he wrote poetry, and he was very engaging. He was very attractive. He loved women. And the title of this is Squeezing the Cat. That's the title of a song that he wrote that I still have a cassette of. He wrote a number of songs that I have them on cassettes. Damn, he's good looking. My son, the guitar player, holds the audience enthralled in this little bar where a dozen women hang on to his every note, or even a huge hall, some vast space with those far away in the bleachers, barely able to see him. A hush falls, and then the yells as he comes forth. Then afterwards, those who rush forth to touch him. This son who has loved guitars from the moment he held one in those bad boy bands. But instead, it was first drugs. The dealers with shotguns, with chains, the strange utterances, the threats, then carrying everything you own in a black plastic garbage bag, and me mailing you boxes of food. Don't give him cash, my therapist says. And the visit with my daughter, when you hold us hostage. Play every song you've written. And at last, the diagnosis, paranoid schizophrenia, hospitals, disability, the right meds at last. But still, the guitar in your hand, the words you sing, your one constant, and then comes the other, the terminal cancer. And again, it's your guitar that you depend on, the drugs and hopeless little bands, misfits like you at the apartment building for the disabled, hitting me up for bucks for musical equipment. At the end, you're still trying to start a real band. And after chemo, the radiation, you even pick up a new woman, travel with her to Jacksonville. Mother, I don't have any natural urges anymore, you say when you come back. Cocaine in his blood work, the doctor says in the ER a few weeks later, where you're taken struggling in breath for breath. And then it's over. And I'm left with the musical scores in your hand. Yes, brilliant in places. Then the small plastic cassette, Squeezing the Cat, and other songs. Thank you for listening. I know those are dark poems. I appreciate you listening, being able to share them with you.
Thanks, Rosemary. Thanks for being with us today. It was gorgeous. Next, I'm going to introduce Kit Robinson, who is a Bay Area poet, writer, musician. We just released his 25th book of poems. It's called Quarantina. We released it early this year. He's also published books with Roof, Chax, Blaze Fox, Adventures in Poetry, and all over the place. He's a collaborator on the grand piano and experiment in collective autobiography. And with Lynn Haginian, he produced In the American Tree, New Writing by Poets, which was a weekly Bay Area radio show of interviews and readings. He also plays Cuban trace guitar in the charanga band Calle Ocho. Keep up with him on his website, which is simply kitrobinson.net. Anyway, it's a pleasure to introduce Kit Robinson.
Thank you very much, Bill. Thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure to be with fellow Lavender Ink authors. I'm going to read from this book that Bill mentioned, Quarantina, just out. Big thanks to Bill. I was thinking, I think it's important these days for us to keep global in the way we think about things and the way we communicate. And I really appreciate what Bill's doing with Lavender Ink and Diálogos as far as getting people to talk and read across boundaries and across languages. So I'm excited to be part of this family, and I'm looking forward to reading more and hearing more from others who are represented by Bill's publishing house. Quarantina is a poetic diary that extends my practice of what I call the discontinuous present into history, in the history of our global crises. And the poems are dated over a period of 3 years, from the beginning of 2019 to late 2021. I'm going to just read a few of them. I'm not going to read the dates except for a couple that have dates as titles. So this book begins before the pandemic and then continues throughout. The first couple ones are from before. Parallel Lives, in memory of Kevin Killian. Poetry is a waiting game. You wait for the line to fill the stanza with life, a moment stolen from the distribution center of language. We just work here. The sound of a barking dog. Light the fuse, and a series of small explosions takes place, like tin cans strung together that dangle from the rear bumper of a car marked up with soap, just married. As line marries line, on into an unknowable future. Fill it with life. Look out the window. Walk to the corner. Pick up the phone. Decisions, decisions. Break for lunch. Dig the streets. Hum a tune. Be there for somebody. Somebody special. All along, that engine sound, PG&E is repairing the lines where they connect under the streets. We live in the city, the definite article celebrated in these lines, whose center is everywhere, whose edge is nowhere. After foraging for mushrooms in the outlying forest, the bearded Russian sits on the bus, a backpack full of them on his lap. Leningrad, 1990, a memory carried forward past the lives of comrades no longer with us. The poem arrives sooner or later, if at all the splendor, all the ardor spills out onto the table, the periodic table, the elements of our lives add up to, minus a sudden breath. And this one is called The Door Swings Open. I write one line, then I forget it. What you read is the result of an ongoing process. Sun comes out, leaves fall, revolution simmers, politics as usual, sleeping dogs lie. Absolutely everything is a big idea that slips your mind when you least expect it. Remember the main thing, alternating current. Forget about it. Day's passage, rhythm of instances the trees chime in with. Energy builds a succession of turnpikes all over this land. Civilization is a good idea. Somebody should try it sometime. Energy flagpoles leave nothing to happenstance. There's more where that came from, or so they say. The door swings open to a late morning world of possibilities. When you forget your wallet, glasses, phone, and keys, and step out into space, a fellow voyager, reading time like a book, making out distant stars, free as a bird. It can mean anything. Animal, mineral, vegetable, feeling, sensation, idea, equation, suspicion, conflagration, book, song, dance, memory, dream, reflection. Once anything is named, it may simply be called it. Everyone will understand. Now suddenly, before there is time to grasp it, there is only one it. When we wake up, there it is. When we go to bed, there it is. Only in dreams can we pass it by. It keeps us apart. It threatens to kill us. It makes everything difficult. It reveals how fucked up everything always was before it arrived. It changes everything. It stands in the way of real change. It's a bitch. It is preceded by a feeling of heaviness that slows the mind, stunts the tongue, blurs the vision. Life as we know it is history. The future is up for grabs. Nothing good will come of it. Something good may come of we the people in order to form a more perfect universe, have work to do. Tell me something good. It is you, youth of today. You know it. It is a work in progress. It's up to you to make it true. Hell no. Where there's smoke, there's causality, going all the way back to before, when the backbone of the American economy arrived from Africa, when Crazy Horse went to the white man's fort and never came back, a bayonet stuck in his back. Before, wild World War III, guns, fire, and plague, sat down to tea under a red sun to rough out a plan for the consummate consumption of any and all land. The other night, Jacob Blake was shot 7 times in the back by the police while getting into his car, where his 3 young sons witnessed the crime. Today, the NBA players canceled their playoff games in Orlando in protest. I'm gonna cancel this poem. January 14th, 2021. 13 minutes passed and I still haven't written anything. Instead, I've been reading Viajes, When It Was Possible to Travel by Sandy Berrigan, verses in English and Spanish, written from Mexico and Central America toward the end of the last century. Egged on by the president, a violent mob breaks into the Capitol to prevent Congress from certifying his election defeat. 7 days later, the president is impeached for a second time. Now we await the peaceful, orderly transition of power essential to democracy, and fear the opposite, assaults on every state capital by irregular militia of gun-toting white supremacists. Then I spent some more time reading poems by Auden, Yeats, and Tarn, September 1, 1939, The Second Coming, Unraveling, Shock. Read them and weep. The time is now, alarm clock of a mad young century. August 22nd, 2021, for Ani. My gears are stripped by holding contradictory ideas in my head, the continuous present and impermanence. So I have some coffee and a hit of weed and make some CDs of our last gig for Izzy, Sandy, and Sue. You are foxy. I am in a daze. The overcast light is steely with smoke and ash. Ask me anything. My mind is open up to a point, at which point I can't talk right now. I'm gone. The phone rings. It's you, a gift from Nick and Laura. A room is an open space, both yours and mine. The heart of the matter spreads itself out, one love, and we still have time to rap to the tune of the train. The Green Planet. Generations of note takers document the centuries from just offshore to somewhere deep in the hills, a maroon den. The moon is half there of a Tuesday morning. The waves stroke the strings of an exquisite instrument, the green planet. Bee on a bud, birds chatter. The garden is alive, an order of being, hand sewn. Windswept pages enter the interim, the long swim between here and there, children's voices. Birds or words? Which was it? Every time the fire came on, it felt good. Wide awake to possibility, just within range or out of sight. Footsteps on gravel. And the last one I'm going to read is called Sending Love. Sending love in all the worn places, fading at sunset, where you used to sit, a hub to so many, constellated even without you, inconsolable as the night they closed the border, sending thousands back into the cold. Continue we must, though the lines be shaky, that crisscross our planetary concern, when in a rush, your presence returns us to an altered state we recognize as home, the one we left without meaning to. How now in a flash the day brightens, a time capsule only of air, neither an ocean nor a forest bee, but grains of light spill upward into the night sky. The moon is half full of meaning as we remember. Location neither here nor there in the woolly crotch of a birth to be, where everything starts again, but differently, this time more alone than not. I see by the light of planets a universal joint that bonds the human project to those of a rocky coast laden with anemones. Where hands and leaves coalesce, roots intertwine, communication continues across interplanetary gaps. Here, love comes across as both necessary and sufficient to life on earth as we know it. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Kit. That was fabulous, as I would have expected. Next, we're going to hear from a poet from Morocco, Aisha Basri, and her translator, Mubarak Srifi. We just published a collection of translations, a selection of her poems. She's very well known in Morocco. I personally refer to her as the Emily Dickinson of Morocco. She writes these terse, very pithy little sort of epigramic poems. And Mubarak Srifi, who is her translator, we also just are just now releasing his book, and the book of his own poems. And so anyway, please welcome Mubarak and Aisha Basri. Mubarak, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Aisha?
Aisha is coming to us from Morocco, and we've been having some technical trouble.
كتسمعني؟
Yeah.
There we go.
We can hear. Can سمعوك Aisha?
Thank you very much, Bill Lavender. صياد الفراشات. كنت زهرة لوز تختال ببياضها العفيف، وكنت طفلا مولعا باصطياد الفراشات. ذريت عبقي زمنا، رسمت لي أقنعة لا تجيد التمثيل. كنت طفلا، كنت فراشة، وكانت الخديعة بيننا.
Catching butterflies. I was an almond flower, swaying in chaste whiteness, and you were a child passionate about chasing butterflies. You pressed me between the pages of a book. You hid my fragrance for years, and for me you made masks unsuitable for acting. You were a child, I was a butterfly, and there was duplicity between us.
كاتدرائية للبكاء. في الكاتدرائية أشعلت شمعة له، وكعادتي نسيت أن أشعل شمعة لي. مطت رقعة من روحي، غفوت، حلمت ضوءا يخترقني، ذراعا تحضن شظاياي، أنفاسا تلهب شعري، ويدا تلملم حبات الدمع وتلفها في منديل من الورق. حلمت أيقونة تسقط في كفي من السماء. حلمتني عارية أغتسل من آلامي، أضمد جروحا بعدد سنواتي، لأولد من جديد في أصيص ورد. عند باب الكاتدرائية تحسست لزوجة في الصدر. يا إلهي، جرح آخر، أيقونة العذراء تسللت إلى القلب ولم أدري.
a cathedral for lamentation. In the cathedral, I lit a candle for him, and as is my habit, I forgot to light one for myself. I extended the limits of my soul. I dozed off. I dreamed that a light was transpiercing me, that an arm was cradling my remains, that breath was stirring up my hair, and that a hand was gathering up my tear drops and wrapping them in a tissue. I dreamt that an icon was falling from the sky into my hands. I was naked in the dream, washing away my pain, dressing my wounds in the numbers of my years, to be born anew in a flower bed. As I was leaving the cathedral, I felt a congestion in my chest. Oh God, not another wound. The icon of the Virgin has crept into my heart, and I had not even noticed.
ميثولوجيا الجسد. لو خلقت بحدس ذئبة كما اتهمت وادعيت أن الذئب أكلني لما أكلت مرتين. لو صرخت يا الله ليست خطاياي ما اقترفت، تلك الحية وشوشت شهواتي لما لسعت من الجحر مرتين. لو وشيت بآدم وبأصبع اتهام أشرت هذا مخلوقك يا رب وقد أكل التفاحة، لما ألقي بي في الأرض جسدا بنزفين، نزف الرحم ونزف القلب. لو كفرت بنفسي وولدتني في طشت الغواية لتوجت ملكة لمملكة إيروسا وملكت جسدي. لو ما خلعت عني ورقة التوت ستري الوحيد ورميتها في وجه الشيطان لكنت شجرة الجنة الموعودة. لو كنت أكثر دهاء وحرصا لما أنجبت من رحمي رجلا ليستعبدني. لو كنت أتوم ما خلقت إلايا ولما كانت هناك امرأة أولى ولا رجل أول ولا كانت الخديعة منذ الأزل. لو فطرت على كيد كما وصمت لكنت قددت قميص من أهوى من قبل وفي العشق صدقوني. لو وقفت على باب الموت وبجرأة العائد منه الذاهب إليه لعنت هاديس وكل أسمائه لما مت بين حياتين. فهل كنت حقا أنا حين لم أكن؟
The mythology of the body. Had I been born with the instincts of the female wolf, as has often been alleged, and claimed to have been consumed by the wolf, I wouldn't have been twice devoured. Had I shouted out, "Oh my God, what I committed were not my sins, but those of the serpent that whispered my desires to me," I would not have been twice bitten. Had I betrayed Adam and accused him, saying, "This is your creation, O God, and it is Adam who ate the apple," I would not have been expelled twice bloodied, once from the womb, once from the heart. Had I lacked faith in myself and been born in the valley of seduction, I would have been crowned a queen in kingdom of the Eros, and my body would have been my own. Had I not taken off my fig leaf, my one and only cover, and thrown it in Satan's face, I would have become the tree of the promised Eden. Had I been cautious and more cunning, I would not have given birth to a man who would enslave me. If I were atom, I would have self-generated, and there would have been no first woman nor first man, nor would betrayal ever have existed. Had I been weaned on hatred, with which I have been branded, I would have torn off the front of my lover's shirt. Then they would have believed me to be in love. Had I stood by death's gates and, with the audacity of one striding through the gate and away, cursed Hades in all its many traits, I would not have died between two lives. Was I really I when I was not me?
الموت لا يعتذر لأحد. لم أرى موتا يعتذر لأحد إلا لي. ذات صباح خريفي في مقبرة مونبارناس بباريس كانت السماء ترد والريح تطوح بالأشجار وزينة القبور. طار معها وشاحي الصوفي الأسود وحملته إلى القسم الجنوبي للمقبرة. أسقطته تماما على قبر مزين بالمرمر. حينها خرج الموت من قبره واعتذر لي عن كل الرعب الذي سببه لي في زياراته المتكررة. خاطبني متلعثما: عفوا سيدتي، لم أكن أقصدك، وأنا أحوم حول سريرك كنت أبحث عن جثة تخصني دفنتها في داخلك. انحنيت التقطت وشاحي نفضت عنه ما علق من قش وطين وغادرت مودعة. أعرف لم تكن تقصدني لأن الجثة ما عادت بداخلي. أحد ما أصابني بعدوى الحياة.
Death offers no apologies. I have never known death to apologize to anyone but me. One fall morning, it was raining in the Montparnasse cemetery in Paris, and the wind was shaking the treetops and the grave ornaments. It swept away my black wool scarf, carried it off to the southern section of the cemetery, and dropped it right there on a marble grave. Suddenly, death came out of the grave and apologized for having frightened me with its frequent visits. It stammered, "I am sorry, madam. It wasn't you I was looking for. When I was hanging around your bed, I was searching for one of my corpses, which I had buried inside you. I bent down, picked up my scarf, brushed off the grass clippings and dirt, and left, bidding death adieu, declaring, I know that you were not seeking me, because the corpse had already left me, and someone had already infused me with life." Thank you very much, everybody. Aisha,
Oui,
that's Safi Baraka.
Safi?
Safely,
Okay. Okay, merci.
Okay.
Thank you both so much. That was wonderful. It's so great to hear the Arabic original, which it was, of course, Arabic to me, and the translation is beautiful, and so is the original. Next, we're going to hear from Norman Fisher. Norman is poet, essayist, and Zen Buddhist priest. I think he's already published another book since we released There Was a Clattering As, but it's close to his most recent, and he's well known both as a poet and as a writer in prose on topics concerning Zen, etc. So please help me welcome Norman Fisher.
Thanks, Bill. And thanks for all of you for being here. Thanks for inviting me, Bill, and thanks to the New Orleans Poetry Festival. Nice to see some old friends. Yeah, I had an idea to write this book. There was a clattering for a long time. And when the pandemic started, I wrote it very quickly, and it is a pandemic poem. And astonishingly, I don't know, it seemed like weeks after I finished it, it appeared. I don't know how Bill managed to turn it around so quickly, but it was rather astonishing. I've never had that experience before, to write something and then within months of its completion, it appears in print. Quite a feat. Anyway, I'll read a little bit from this. I'll read for about 10 minutes. Everybody is very patient all this time. I must say, wow, all the things that we've heard so far have been kind of overwhelming. So many different brilliant voices. Every poet a completely different world. It's kind of hard to recover from each one to the next. Thanks all those who've read before. It was really great to listen. Legend has it that when he assisted his father in his trade as butcher, he gave speeches in high style while slaughtering pigs. But in fact, after farming outside his small village, his father became a glover who manufactured and sold on Henley Street. And the son would add to the packages a few appropriate lines of verse, often ending in a pun on his name, for he dreamt of fame, though he had no prospects, and knew a name was the thing. What's in a sweet name? Leather and wool, which was illegal without a permit, a bit of farming and husbandry, so he knew sheep and was familiar with the inside of a shepherd's coat. In these times in England, extensive literacy and education, sensibilities sensitized to rhetorical effects in robust language. Ordinary people possessed a taste for elaborate display, as in long and complex sermons attended carefully each Sunday by the sincerely faithful, with long attention spans and discriminating ears on hard wooden pews. Then in London gathered the poets, rich in repartee and daring do, heavy drinking and eating, and lively verbal style forged in classical education in universities, where both low-born and high could steep in Greek and Latin examples, or rhetorical bombast and ribaldry, and tales of the foolishness of kings. Lodge and Watson, Peele and Nash, Marlowe, and excessive Robert Greene, talented, narcissistic, self-dramatizing, self-promoting, shameless, undisciplined, in short, a scoundrel who abandoned his children and wife and stole from the poor as he gluttonized drunkenly between bursts of sloppy but brilliant writing and duplicity and moments of failed moral reform. His red hair spilled upon his face, slumped upon his dropsical body until he stirred, sudden as a volcano, energetically erupting into laughter or fury in the public house, where all gathered. He arrived those few years when they conjured an English theater scene, outrageous and commercial, but being not of the university, a practical small town man, a player, careful with his cash, conservative in his manners, an ordinary person, not a poet, listened, watched, held back, watched, listened, as shortly perished all. This at 32, that at 35, this at 40, and that barely at 30. And he went to his grave, crowned with laurel by a shoemaker's wife, his creditor, a wild head full of a mad brain, a scholar, a courtier, a ruffian, a gamester, a lover, a soldier, a traveler, a merchant, a breaker, an artificer, a botcher, a pettifogger, a player, a cozener, a railer, a beggar, an omnigatherum, an author for knaves and fools. So this is one continuous kind of collaged poem. The whole book is, there's no titles, just sections, one after the other. Surrounded by pelicans and frigate birds, dive bombing the boat and fighting over fish. Their shark bite wings, forked tail, and long, straight, primitive beaks as in Olson's Mayan letters. In the pleading, another voice speaks, not yours. Hear the sounds, see the sights, the sky with its endless terraces, the scream of an ancient call that floats or bobs on the waters. In the hush, I don't know, nor can see. Language is such a disappointment. Clunky words that mean so little. How can an author have confidence? How can a king rule? A crown not distribute its lethality. Bracing perceptions blow you back. A terror freezes fluid bones solid. It isn't even you anymore. White hot for the world to pull its handle. And you go down, riding those waves of sound, in a pinch anyway. And who are you pinching? I'm pinching you, pinching me. It's the only way I know I'm alive. But if you know, and if you pinch, are you still alive? Is knowing a kind of death, an absence papered over with thought? Love must burn, just the way it did when I didn't know who you were, or what you were, or what I was. Love me then like a rake loves gravel, a tree loves a snake, an apple loves loins at break of day. And why, after all, did Augustine so despise sexuality? Was it the taste of his earlier experience, his self-loathing, which he identified with his knowing God's judgment in him, and therefore God's awesome presence? Or was it that life itself, whose energies sex metaphorizes, is toxic and must be endured and entranced and sublimated as painful entry into the kingdom of the real? God made love to be perfect. What went wrong? God has pitched his mansion in the place of excrement, a slight discrepancy, or maybe not, and sex is all perversion and must be so. And yet, Augustine was overcome by his own disgust. Sex was a challenge to his mind he couldn't conceptualize except as spiritual catastrophe. The Virgin Mother must be pure. Monica was pure. Faith par excellence after the painful sin of having given birth to God, or in Monica's case, himself. A boy loves his mother. Tearing his clothes and shaving his head, the despairing Job falls to the ground and says, "Naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return. The Lord giveth, and the Lord taketh away." Epidemics become pandemics after having become endemic, lurking in the atmosphere, the soil, the soul, waiting to spring forth, Smallpox was endemic, epidemic, and pandemic for 3,000 years, maybe beginning when people first domesticated animals, coming from the animals, distempered by their natural resistance to domestication, i.e., having their genes messed with, but being unable to conceive of oppression or organize against it, produced this simple anomaly, shared between themselves and the upright species as a sort of unexpected offering or homage. Egypt had it, Ramses V died of it, and the Romans had it. That is, the aggregation that spread economic opportunity, civilizing politeness, and class rule, so that by the 15th century, all Europe had it. 30% fatality rate, but 90% of children. Having a child a year, losing a child every other year, the lot of exhausted breeding women, the hard feelings persist. Parents would not name nor devote themselves completely to their children until after they'd survived the pox, not wanting to risk losing a designated and cherished loved one with a full identity. Curtailment of identity being the chiefest form of human self-protection. Pandemics produce their own demise. The more people get sick, the less they do eventually. The body politic adjusts temporarily, and enough people recovered, and with immunity, all others already dead, the disease disappears till in time it finds the opening to return in force, not out of any malice, but in the natural way of things that go always forward where they can to make more of themselves. When a virus finds virgin soil, a place inhabited by humans who have never experienced it, it has its way with them. So the peoples in the lands unknown to Europeans, tens of millions of whom succumbed to smallpox and the other innovative viruses in the so-called New World, clearing the land for occupation, destroying vast, advanced empires, the Aztecs, Incas, etc., and creating the necessity for African slaves, since there were but few natives left or willing to be impressed as foreign labor always necessary to do the backbreaking work that requires lack of identity. Foreign here meaning lacking identity in our terms. Anyway, that section goes on quite a bit longer with the sort of history of pandemics, but I'll end there because everybody's being very patient. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Norman. That was fabulous. I've been working on Augustine myself lately. So it was very interesting to me what you had to say about him. Last and far from least, in fact, surely the greatest. Even my dog is cheering him. He is Mark Statman. I first met when I was still at UNO Press before they fired me, and in a fit of anger, I started Diálogos and started this round of publishing that I'm on. Okay, let's see if he'll be still. There's nothing I can do about him.
Take him out.
But anyway, so Mark has recently moved to Oaxaca, and he's going to bring all of us down there soon. And we've just published his latest book. This is, I think, my 6th book all total. And it's very happy to hear him read from Hechizo. And I'll let him explain to you what that title means. Anyway, very happy to have Mark Statman.
Mark.
Hey, man. How are you, babe? Is she there? Come back. Come back.
She can't hear you.
She can-
I have headphones in.
Okay. Well, give her my love, okay?
I will.
Thank you. All right. So I start now?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. My name is Mark Statman. I'm really grateful to be reading here. I have some good friends who are in the room, I can see, and really honored to be reading with some poets whose work I've admired for a very long time, and especially my brother Indran, who I can see just came on, and Norman, who I have just recently gotten to know. I think we're getting to know each other better, no? And I'll stay within the 10 minutes because that's something I try to do. But I want to express my love to Bill, who, yeah, we've been working together for a little while. He's published now, 6 of my books. What a gift to have someone so committed to a poet. He's a fabulous poet. If you don't know Bill's work, go find it. It is incredible. And so if you don't know it, and it's so wonderful to have a poet who's so committed to the work of other poets and who cares about them and nurtures them and really thinks about them and says, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need? And then you say, well, you know, and then it's there. So like Norman's book, my book has a narrative. This is Hitchy. So it's my newest book. It has a narrative, and so to figure out the narrative, I thought, how do I read from this? This is my first public reading from this book, so I'm a little nervous and a little not sure. So I'm going to read just different parts, and I realized the narrative doesn't possibly make sense, so I just tried to separate them and put them in as poems. So here we go. Kabbalah. Turn off the light for the mountains in the distance. A sign points in the other direction, saying the path is over there, the other way. The prayer says, ask the strange on the road, ask the beggar among you with his hourglass, his outstretched hand with words written on his face, and you walk the distance into the nowhere. It's that long, it's that slow. The night you turn the light back on, trace the letters in the book, master the words, master the language, say to yourself, there's no matter, there's no substance. The soul calls out, here I am. Hineni. Far from the mountains, far from the river, far the cities and crowds, the deserts, the forests. It's so far from anywhere there's anyone. Your soul, innocent, isn't body those wounds of your own, making wounds of spinning selves, measured against another prayer, a psalm, the hearts of the angels so close, their hearts and your heart beating, you feel it hard and frightening. One breath, another breath, one after another, the mysterious closing in on you, the mysterious world, you imagine a fire that might warm you now. The nights have been colder, cold, endless or infinite. It's hard to know which heart to know, why the pointing sides had not been sinfully more inscribed. Go back. Memorial. Who wants to go the way of all flesh and not dictate how to be remembered? I want to be there to write the obituary, to speak at whatever service there is. I want to be a mourner, to be a sad a little, and to be one who speaks, tells a story, a joke, who raises a toast in my honor, comforted by my presence and by my absence. Comforted, I want to comfort in love, with love, anyone who misses me. On the road. It's hard to write a poem called On the Road because, you know, on the road. Take the coastline and mountains of serenity and justice, fierce battalion of Karakara and falcons. Every step and twist and turn, it's a meeting of the mind, serpent on my wrist, the wizard they want, entry into paradise. There is no paradise. There are footprints, body prints, plátanos in the trees, and cocofillas at the road stands bottles of mezcal, silver, glass, glitter. In afternoon sunlight, everyone on the side of the road, half naked in the heat. Water steams off them. They wave at passing cars, airplanes overhead. We are all going somewhere. Fate, perdition, paradise, a weave of time, courage, and sky, raptors. It takes hold with the music on the radio. All the boys love Marianne. In the air with the windows open in jasmine. I was thinking of Indran writing in Spanish because his English is, I didn't, but here I am living in Mexico, and Catherine said to me one night, you were talking out loud and you were dreaming out loud. I said, really? A little scared of my dreams out loud. And she said, but it was in Spanish. I live in Mexico and I dream in Spanish. It's kind of crazy. One day, Indran, we're gonna have to talk about this, like how it is to live in so many different languages all the time. Because I'm also studying in Hebrew and I'm studying Nahuatl, and what you and I will talk, my friend. Bésame, as if the last time, bésame, you guys all know that means kiss me. Bésame, as if the last time, as if the stars align, they're singing constellations like choral kiss and embrace. Embrace me as if the meaning of rain and the meaning of sleep, the meaning of order, the meaning of erasure, told stories. Tell where in the world I'll go after the last words, the last hallelujah, the amen of being aligns. They'll walk up and down the stairs, thirsty for a glass of water. When the house empties, how alone among the voices I'll struggle, my loss of words, and I'll ask of you forgiveness. A ceremony to replace resolve. We resolve, we listening, besa, that song. Leonard Cohen was a good friend of my father-in-law, and Catherine, when she was growing up, called him Booty Leonard. And so I had to put that last hallelujah, the amen, in a poem just to honor Leonard Cohen. Small lesson. Javier's daughters sing along with the radio, playing out through the cool and cloudy Sunday afternoon. Lo que hiciste a mi corazón, what you did to my heart. She's too young to have had her heart broken, at least in the way of the song. There are so many other heartbreaks she could have had. She was 9, maybe 10. Our hearts so easily broken by the world, by politics and dreaming. There's another song now, Ranchera, a different kind of music and the same broken love. She waves at me, the neighbor girl in pink blouse and blue jeans, leading her family sheep and goats across their field and into ours. She's singing along again, her high, sweet voice, a little out of tune. Liberation Army. This is a poem I wrote for my mom. This whole book is dedicated. It's such a beautiful book Bill did. He always does beautiful books. So this whole book is dedicated to my mom, Dolores Scherer Statman, who is going to come to visit us in August in Mexico, and all of you are invited. We're going to have a big party. So everyone come. And we're going to have a performance space, and everyone can read, and there's going to be music. And this is Liberation Army for my mom. I know your stories you love with a fierceness even God couldn't undo, even God. You tell that story you like to tell of your song, how they tried to tell you you were too young to love. You talk about your rock there in Central Park, where the two of you, my dad, would go, as if that rock in that city of cities were yours. and only, and of all the years, and all the years, in all the years. Your story is here, in these southern Mexico mountains, in a prayer sung on high from me. Now comes today, an insistence of morning birds, of coming rain, cicadas, and your loneliness too that makes the story fiercer and more quiet. Still a prayer always, a prayer sad and sung always. I'm going to read 2 more poems. Mexican songs. Mexican songs sound sometimes holy, sacred to me like synagogue prayers from when I was young, like the high holy day. And there'd be this lifting, this soaring, the sense of the presence, if not of God, some force beyond all forces made from human voice. I hear La Llorona, Paloma Negra, Zandonga, distant street accordion, distant radio, distant guitar, and the soft despair, softness, out condition. That's our turning, the song, so that we in love, lost love, abandoned love, our tears can say at night, at dawn, we wing the sun, the tears black. A lost city, a lost maiden, a lost forever. We in song long for peace, long for return. We long our spirits lifting how far fallen. We wonder if the life we wanted, so wanted, longed of, and for. We wonder if not then, and then maybe these days. Two poems, I'm sorry, 2 poems. Revolution in the air. Because there needs to be a revolution in the air right now, right? For all of us. We live in tough times. Revolution in the air. That couple on the park bench, my age, maybe older, they're kissing and holding hands and quietly talking, laughing. They look at each other with the look of lovers who've been lovers for years. The familiar intensity of eyes to eyes to eyes to eyes, and ease with which they lean into each other. Their bodies easily shift. She reclines against him. He strokes her hair. She examines his hand and hers, holds it up against the sky. The whole world passes around them. The whole world full of children, of dogs and walkers and runners, other couples on other benches, other lovers and love's embrace. The air is clear this evening. The sky, outrun of giant trees, of and fountains. And the last poem is called MLS. That's my name, Mark Lloyd Statman. And then it's parenthesis, heart, KLK, Catherine Lloyd Coke, who is, I think, in the room. Are you still there, baby? Yeah, I see you. Okay. So this last poem is called MLS, heart, KLK. There's a wearing into revelation. Stone, trees, seashells, mountains, forests, shoreline, cities, highways, initials carved in a tree no longer there. But whoever carved them when I was one carving, we all think they're there. Memory memorializes one kind of certainty and holds its own uncanny weight. Thank you so much for letting me be a Lavender Ink poet.
Thank you for being one. And thank all of you who read tonight for this. This was an extremely cool reading. I don't think anyone can say there's been a more diverse and interesting reading in a while.
And
yeah,
let us all like say we love you for being the guy that brings us all together.
okay.
Everyone, for Bill.
We love you. We love you, Bill. We do. We really do. Thank you.
Love you, Bill.
Thanks for everything you do, Bill. You're amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. Don't worry about it. I'm out.
Don't.
Those of you who are here, well, and actually, since I'm just looking around, most of you aren't here. So even though this is our last Zoom only event, our live events, which start tomorrow, will also be Zoomed. So check out the schedule and come see those. We're going to have some very interesting things. And there's my dog telling me it's time for me to pay attention to him. But anyway, love to all of you. Thanks for coming out, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you,
Thanks, everyone.
Jonathan. All the best.
You know,
Thank you so much.
Bill, you know what the Jews say? We always say next year in Jerusalem, but I think this time we'll say next year in Nola. How's that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, next year in Nolo, we are hoping that it's going to be something truly epic next year. So see y'all then. Please
See you.
plan on it.
Take
All
care.
right.
Okay.
Ciao.
Yeah, ciao. Thank you.
Norman, so good to hear you read. Indran, so good to see you.
And to hear you back, thank you. Thank you. Let's talk. Cheers.
Good to see you. I miss you.
The
I'm
best.
from Oaxaca.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you.
Oh, wait, who else is waiting? I can't see everyone who's waiting. Mark, what are you doing, man? How are you?